In the final days of World War II, as Europe lay in ruins and the horrors of the Nazi regime were coming fully into view, a quiet race began behind the scenes. It wasn't a race for territory or soldiers, but for minds. Some of the most advanced scientists in the world had worked for Nazi Germany, and both the United States and the Soviet Union wanted them. This secret effort by the U.S. government became known as Operation Paperclip, a classified program that brought more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to America.
Behind every moment lies a scientific wonder. I'm Kale, and welcome to SciCurios, where curiosity meets science.
Many of them had been members of the Nazi Party. Some had directly supported a regime responsible for war crimes and mass murder. Yet, within a few short years, these same individuals would help build America's rockets, missiles, and eventually, its space program. So how did this happen? At the heart of Operation Paperclip was fear. By 1945, the Cold War was already taking shape. The United States believed that if it didn't recruit German scientific talent, the Soviet Union would. German research in rocketry, aeronautics, chemistry, and medicine was years ahead of Allied capabilities. The most famous example was the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. The V-2 was designed under the leadership of Wernher von Braun, a brilliant rocket engineer who had worked for the Nazi military. While the rocket was a technological marvel, it was built using forced labor from concentration camp prisoners. Thousands died producing it. Despite this, von Braun and his team surrendered to U.S. forces and were quickly identified as invaluable assets. Under Operation Paperclip, U.S. intelligence officials altered or ignored records that showed Nazi affiliations. Background checks were rewritten. Past crimes were minimized or erased. The goal was simple: secure knowledge first, ask ethical questions later. Once in the United States, these scientists were placed in military and research institutions. Von Braun and his colleagues were sent to work on ballistic missiles for the U.S. Army. Their expertise directly contributed to the development of the Redstone rocket, which later launched America's first astronaut into space. Over time, many of these former German scientists transitioned from military projects to civilian research. When NASA was formed in 1958, it absorbed much of this talent. Von Braun became one of the most influential figures in the American space program, playing a central role in designing the Saturn V rocket, the massive launch vehicle that carried astronauts to the moon. From a purely technological standpoint, Operation Paperclip worked. The United States gained a decisive edge in aerospace engineering. Without this knowledge transfer, the space race might have ended very differently. But the moral cost was enormous. Operation Paperclip raised uncomfortable questions that still echo today. Can scientific progress be separated from the actions of those who create it? Is it acceptable to overlook crimes in the name of national security? And who gets justice when history is rewritten for strategic advantage? Critics argue that the program undermined post-war accountability. While some Nazi officials stood trial at Nuremberg, others were quietly rewarded with new lives, stable careers, and public recognition in the United States. Survivors of forced labor camps were rarely acknowledged, let alone compensated. Defenders of the program argue that the Cold War left no room for idealism. In their view, failing to act would have handed dangerous technology to the Soviet Union, potentially changing the balance of global power. What makes Operation Paperclip especially complex is that both perspectives are true. The scientific achievements that followed, satellites, space exploration, missile defense, shaped the modern world. Yet those achievements were built, in part, on foundations laid during one of history's darkest chapters. Today, historians rely on declassified documents from the U.S. National Archives to piece together the full story. These records reveal not just what was gained, but what was deliberately hidden. Operation Paperclip was not an accident of history. It was a calculated decision made in secrecy. In the end, Operation Paperclip forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. Progress is not always clean. And technological advancement does not automatically equal moral advancement. As we celebrate humanity's greatest scientific milestones, we're also challenged to remember where some of that knowledge came from and at what cost. So here's the question for you. Can groundbreaking science ever justify overlooking crimes against humanity? Or should there always be a line that must not be crossed?
Science is everywhere if you just know where to look. Thanks for watching SciCurious. Until next time.